I am not speaking to you about silence. I want to take you into silence because silence is not a thought. It is not a theory. Silence is a state where words fall away on their own. Man speaks a lot but says very little, and he who speaks too much often does so because something inside is empty. You have seen that empty vessels make the most noise. A filled pot remains quiet. Silence is not weakness. Silence is prosperity. But you have been taught, speak, or people will ignore you. Speak, or you will fall behind. Speak, or you will be considered a fool. This society is built of noise. This crowd lives by sound, and he who is silent is a threat to this crowd. Because a silent man does not think he sees. I am not telling you never to speak at all. No, I am saying speak only where it is necessary. For the rest of the time, let yourself descend within. Words take energy. Every word emerges from your consciousness. A person who speaks without necessity slowly hollows out their soul. You must have experienced it after speaking a lot. A strange fatigue sets in. This is not the fatigue of the body, it is the fatigue of the soul. Once a disciple came to me and said, I speak the truth, yet people distance themselves from me. I asked him, did anyone ask you for the truth? He became quiet. Even truth, if given without being asked for, becomes poison. Speaking is also an art, and the root of that art is silence. Silence does not mean you are afraid. Silence does not mean you have nothing to say. Silence means you know when to speak and when not to. Buddha spoke little. Mahavira spoke even less. But when they spoke, centuries listened. Why? Because their words were born from the womb of silence. Today, man is available at all times. He is in reaction at all times. Someone speaks, immediate reply. Someone writes, immediate comment. This is not response, this is slavery. Silence sets you free. When you are quiet, you are under no one's control. I ask you to perform an experiment. For one whole day, speak only as much as is absolutely essential. Spend the rest of the time just watching. See how many times your mind wants to speak without reason, and when you stop it, a new energy begins to gather within you. This very energy becomes meditation. This very energy becomes wisdom. Remember, only the person who can remain silent can speak meaningfully. Everything else is just noise. The crowd speaks, the king remains silent, and when the king speaks, history is made. Do not fear silence. Fear the habit that compels you to say something every moment. In silence, you will meet yourself, and he who has met himself has no need to prove anything to the world. I see you are listening, but still with the mind. Now, slowly leave the mind behind. Do not listen to the words, but to the emptiness between them. Because what I am saying is not in the words, it is between the words. Man's greatest illness is that he thinks speaking is life. Therefore, he speaks. When there is nothing to say, he laughs. When nothing moves inside, he agrees just so he doesn't end up alone. The crowd does not like silence. Your absence pricks the crowd. When you become silent, you move out of the crowd, and coming out of the crowd requires courage. You have seen that when you are quiet, people become uncomfortable. They immediately ask something or the other. They start joking, they create noise, because your silence exposes the noise within them. Silence is a mirror, and most people are afraid of the mirror. I tell you, when someone insults you, do not reply immediately. The haste to reply is a sign of ego. Ego suffocates in silence, and if you truly look, you will find that most insults are born within you. The other person only threw a word. Once a king came to me. He said, there is much dispute in my court. I asked, how many times do you speak? He said, a lot. I said, from today until a question is truly necessary, remain silent. After a month he returned. He said, the disputes vanished on their own. Why? Because where the king is silent, flattery dies. There, politics does not survive. Silence is not just personal. Silence is revolutionary. A silent person cannot be bought, cannot be provoked, cannot be misled, because he does not react. He is responsible. Reaction belongs to machines. Responsibility belongs to consciousness. You will ask, but if we remain quiet, people will think we are weak. People thought Buddha was weak too. But those same people sat at Buddha's feet. There is a strange dignity in silence. It is not visible, but it is felt. Be careful, not every silence is right. A fearful silence is dead. A suppressed silence is sick. But an aware silence that is alive. It is pulsating. It echoes without words. I give you a formula. If the word arises from within, speak. If the word is a compulsion from the outside, remain silent. This is the test. When you begin to settle into this silence, you will find that people look at you with a strange reverence. They don't know why, but they know you are different. And being different is the first step of awakening. Silence does not separate you from the crowd. It separates you from lies. And he who is separated from lies does not remain alone. He is with himself. Now I see you are connecting less with words and more with the stillness. This is the right direction because what I am saying is not understood by hearing. It opens up by pausing. The human mind is a market. Thoughts come, go, collide and make noise. And you have considered this market your home. That is why you cannot remain quiet. To remain quiet is death for the mind, and the mind does not want to die. When you sit in silence, the mind plays tricks. It says, speak something, write something, prove something. Because if you just are, the need for the mind ends. I tell you a deep thing. He who speaks more lives less, and he who lives deeply becomes a miser with words. Because life is bigger than words. You have seen it in love. When love is deep, words fall away on their own. Two lovers can sit together for hours without speaking, and there is no discomfort. That same silence with a stranger feels heavy. Why? Because love supports silence. I say create such love within yourself that you can sit quietly with your own self. The person who cannot stay quiet with themselves cannot truly stay with the world. A seeker came to me and said, I meditate a lot, but there is no peace within. I asked, how much do you speak outside of meditation? He smiled and became silent. His silence was his answer. Silence is not a practice. Silence is a result. When you stop unnecessary speaking, silence descends on its own. You cannot get silence. You can only leave the noise. Society trains you to speak, but not to remain quiet. In school, you are taught to give answers. No one ever teaches you to stop and see. When you stay in silence, you start seeing how many words are born from lies, how many from fear, and how many from ego. And as soon as this thing begins, words start falling away. This is the point where the necessary and the unnecessary begin to separate. You suddenly know this is to be spoken, this is to be left. This knowledge does not come from any book. It comes from the fragrance of silence. I say again, where words make you light, speak. Where words make you heavy, remain silent. Silence is not a burden, silence is flight. Now I want to take you even slower. Because in silence there can be no haste. The mind is what hurries. Silence wants stillness. You have perhaps heard this for the first time. Silence also deepens, just as a river gets deeper, just as the night becomes denser. Until now, you have understood silence only as the absence of words, but that is only the beginning. True silence begins when the words are gone, and even the desire to speak is gone. Within man, a constant chatter is going on. Even if the outer mouth is closed, the inner mouth starts speaking even louder. Therefore, I say, silence comes not from the outside, but from within. Now understand the deep thing. Man speaks for three reasons. First, he is afraid that if he remains quiet, people will forget him. Second, he wants people to acknowledge him, respect, acceptance, praise. Third, he wants to run away from himself because if he becomes quiet, he will have to meet himself, and meeting oneself is the most difficult thing. When you sit in silence, a strange restlessness comes in the beginning. The mind says, what are you doing? Do something, be something. This is the moment where 95% of people pull back and only those 5% move forward because they do not run from this restlessness. They see, look, this restlessness is not you. This is a habit of years. This is the noise of society that has made a nest within you. If you watch it for a while, it starts becoming weak, and a moment comes suddenly a deep hush within. This hush is not dead, it is alive. From here, silence begins to become power. But remember, this power is not violent. This power is peaceful. Like a mountain does not scream, yet its presence is felt by everyone. Now understand, when you descend deep into silence, a field begins to form around you. You don't even realize it, but people coming near you start speaking softly. Their anger lessens, their hurry loosens. Why? Because silence is contagious. Just as noise spreads, so does silence. I have seen many times one quiet person silences the whole room without saying anything, and 10 speakers cannot make one quiet person restless. This is the victory of silence. But here is a very subtle danger. Ego can make silence its weapon too. It can say, look how quiet I am, how deep I am. As soon as this thought comes, silence is broken. True silence never knows itself, it just is. I tell you another parable. Once, a monk remained silent for many years. People started considering him great. One day, someone asked, "Why have you been silent for so many years?" He replied, "Because people do not listen." In a moment, his silence became ego, and that very moment was the beginning of his downfall. Therefore, remember, silence is not an achievement. Silence is not a position. Silence is just your nature when you leave lies. Now I give you an understanding, not a practice. Every time you are about to speak, pause for a moment. Do not ask, "What should I speak?" Ask, "Is remaining silent more truthful right now?" If the answer is yes, stay quiet. And if the answer is no, then speak. But then speak fully, speak clearly, speak the truth. Speaking only where necessary is not half meditation, it is full meditation, because then every word is born from silence, and a word born from silence is never in vain. Now I am taking you into the most delicate, the deepest layer of silence. Here, words become almost useless, but still I am speaking so that you can go beyond speaking. So far you have seen that silence is power, silence is dignity, silence is energy. Now understand, silence is relationship. And perhaps this is the most difficult thing. Man is unhappy in relationships because he does not listen. He only waits to give a reply. The other is speaking, and inside your mind is preparing its lines. This is not listening, this is not dialogue, this is the collision of two egos. When you descend into silence, you learn to listen for the first time. To listen means not just words, but to hear the emotion, the pain, the fear, the unspoken. I tell you, most fights are born not from a word, but from an unlistened silence. One person wanted to say something but got scared, the other didn't try to understand, and both returned inside separately. Now listen to a parable. A husband and wife came to me. The wife said, "He doesn't listen." The husband said, "She never stays quiet." I smiled. I told them, "Today both of you sit together for 1 hour without speaking." They were nervous, but they did it. After an hour, their eyes were moist. They didn't say anything. There was no need to say anything. Silence said what words can never say. This is the miracle of silence. Silence builds a bridge between you and the other. Words often become wars. But remember, silence also demands responsibility. If you are quiet and anger is brewing inside, then this is not silence, this is suppression. Suppression is poison, silence is medicine. Therefore, when you talk to someone, keep only two states. Either speak completely without fear or hiding, or listen completely without crafting a response. The middle path is sickness. Now I introduce you to another secret of love. The greatest gift in love is presence. And presence comes from silence. When you are truly silent, your being calms the other. A mother takes the child in her lap. She doesn't give a speech, she doesn't give a sermon, she just is, and the child becomes calm. This silence is biological, it is spiritual. The person who knows silence within does not try to fix anyone. He knows that being fixed happens spontaneously. His silence gives space to the other. And understand this too, sometimes silence is the most compassionate answer. When someone is in grief and you have no solution, then stay quiet, stay with them. Your silence will provide 1,000 times more support than your words. Now a final formula for this part: where there is love, words become fewer, and where there are many words, love is lost somewhere. Now I am taking you to that point of silence where fear starts falling away on its own. Here, there is no fight, no logic. Here, there is only seeing. Fear is born from noise, and silence is the natural enemy of fear. But remember, I am not saying suppress fear with silence. No, suppressed fear becomes even more poisonous. I am saying look at fear in silence. Man speaks to run away from fear. You have seen that when afraid, people start laughing unnecessarily, talking unnecessarily, searching for crowds. Why? Because fear is more visible in solitude. Therefore, society teaches you, don't be alone, don't be quiet, because if you are alone and quiet, fear will be exposed. Now understand, fear is not an object, fear is a shadow, and you don't fight a shadow. A shadow vanishes when you stand in the light. Silence is light. When you sit in silence, first fear emerges. This is natural. The mind says something is wrong, something will be lost, you are not safe. This is the moment where people pull back, and this is where the practice begins. If you can sit quietly with fear for a while, a miracle happens. Fear shakes, fear trembles, fear begins to break, because fear cannot live when it is being watched. I give you a very deep formula. Fear is born not from ignorance, but from lack of acquaintance. You are not acquainted with fear. You have been running from it. Silence introduces you. Now I take you toward the fear of death. All fears are ultimately connected to the fear of death. The fear of poverty is the shadow of death. The fear of loneliness is the shadow of death. The fear of failure is the shadow of death. Man fears death because he has never touched his existence in silence. He who knows only the body will fear death. He who knows his being in silence smiles. In silence, you find a presence that is larger than the body, larger than the thought, larger than time. And this presence was never born, never dies. Therefore, I say silence is not a practice for death. It is the realization of immortality. Every time you descend deep into silence, you die a little bit. But this dying is not destruction. This dying is the falling of the lie. What is the lie? The identity you have borrowed, name, position, role, image. In silence, all this start dropping. And when they fall, a fear comes. If all this is gone, then who am I? This is the real question. If you can stay quiet with this question without searching for an answer, the answer itself descends. The answer is not in words. The answer is in peace. And when this peace comes, you find you were never lost, you were never broken, you were never going to die. Now understand, this is the reason why a person who knows silence cannot be controlled by fear, not by death, not by hell, not by society. He becomes free. But with this freedom comes another thing, compassion. He who is free from fear begins to understand the fear of others. He doesn't fight, he doesn't want to change them, he just remains present. This is why Buddha's presence used to calm people. He didn't do anything, he was. I end this part with a formula. Silence doesn't kill fear, it makes fear unnecessarily. Now I bring you to that point of silence where silence doesn't remain just quietness. It becomes meditation. Here many people get confused. They think, I am sitting quiet, so I am meditating. No, sitting quiet is not meditation. Meditation is when even the quietness disappears. Now listen very carefully, or rather feel behind the words. Meditation doesn't come from doing anything. Meditation comes from stopping. When you leave the hurry of doing anything, the mind is constantly doing something, if not outside, then inside, if not inside, then in the future, if not in the future, then in the past. The mind fears emptiness, and meditation is emptiness itself. When you sit in silence, thoughts slowly start coming forward. First they are fast, then they start repeating, then they get tired. But remember, you don't have to stop them. A stopped thought returns with more power. You only have to watch. Watching is the greatest penance. There is no violence in watching, no effort, and this is why the mind is afraid of being watched. Now understand a deep experience. When you are watching thoughts, a moment comes when you find the thoughts are there, but the watcher is separate. Here, the revolution occurs. Here, for the first time, you are not the mind. And as soon as you are not the mind, silence descends not just outside but inside as well. This silence is dense, deep, alive. Now understand, this very silence changes your words. Now you don't speak like before. Now your words are fewer but accurate, direct, heavy. One sentence does the work of 1,000 sentences. This is why awakened people speak less. They know that what is to be said cannot be fully said in words. Now speak only where necessary. Understand its meaning. Its meaning is not etiquette. Its meaning is not strategy. Its meaning is, do not speak from the ego. Ego wants to speak everywhere. Meditation speaks only on necessity. When you descend into meditation, you find many times that what you wanted to speak was not necessary at all. And many times the silence says everything. Now another subtle thing, after descending into silence, the desire to give sermons may arise. This is very dangerous because it is spiritual ego. If you are truly in silence, you don't want to change anyone. You know, awakening is contagious. You just stay in your state and whoever comes near you starts seeing their own self. I have seen many times a person who is truly in meditation changes the whole family without speaking, because now there are no reactions, there are responses. Reaction comes from the past, response comes from the present, and silence keeps you in the present. Now understand this, too, silence is not a separate practice. Silence becomes the background of life. You speak, but silence remains inside. You walk, but silence remains inside. You work, but silence remains inside. This is true meditation. And when this happens, Life does not give fatigue because fatigue comes from conflict. In silence, there is no conflict. I end this part with a very deep remembrance. When silence becomes permanent, speaking becomes service, then you don't speak to get something, you speak to give something. Now I take you to that land of silence where action changes, where doing also becomes a kind of non-doing. Here life does not remain a struggle, it becomes a flow. Until now you have lived life as if it were a war. Every day something has to be gained. Every day something has to be proved. Every day someone has to be overtaken. And in this race you kept speaking, running, getting tired. But in silence a new understanding descends. Life is not done, it is lived. When silence deepens within you, action changes. Earlier you worked with ego. Now work happens on its own. Earlier it was I am doing. Now only happening remains. This is the point where the secret of the guitar becomes alive. The doer disappears, and when there is no doer, there is no bondage. Now understand, bondage is not from the action but from the doer. Two people do the same work, one gets bound, the other becomes free. What is the difference? One does it in noise, the other in silence. Action done in silence does not tire you because there is no internal friction. You flow, just as a river flows. The river doesn't think about whether she will reach the ocean or not, she just flows. Now see this too. In silence, success and failure lose their meaning because both are games of the ego. Success says I am big, failure says I am small. Silence says you are just. When this understanding comes, you start taking risks. But this risk comes not from greed but from freedom. You are not afraid of losing because now you are not bound to winning either. I have seen that the person who starts living in silence becomes the most courageous because fear is of the image, and in silence no image remains. Now another deep thing, in silence your moral sense changes. Now you don't decide good or bad from a book. Your intuition awakens. You know this is to be done, this is not, without logic, without advice. This is why an awakened person is never confused. He might even do wrong, but he is not a liar. And understand this too, in silence, compassion descends automatically. You don't have someone so that it looks good. You do it because you are seeing, and he who sees cannot ignore. Now speak only where necessary. Opens up another meaning. When your speaking becomes action. You speak because silence is making you speak, and you stay quiet because silence is making you stay quiet. This is natural life, no forcing, no hesitation, no acting. I end this part with a deep remembrance. A life lived in silence is not religious, it is sacred. Religion gives rules, sacredness gives understanding. Now I am taking you toward that silence where time begins to break. Here the clock moves, but you do not move. Here days and nights change, but inside nothing changes. This is the point where man for the first time knows that now. Man's greatest illusion is that he thinks he is living in the present. He doesn't know that he is either in the yesterday that has passed or in the tomorrow that is to come. The past sits as a memory, the future as hope and fear, and the present, well, it never arrived. Therefore I say silence is the scissors of time. In silence, the voice of the past starts fading. The imagination of the future becomes blood. And suddenly a moment comes where there is only this moment. This moment feels very ordinary, so ordinary that the mind ignores it. But this is the most extraordinary. When you are fully in silence, you find you are breathing but not thinking. You are seeing but not naming. You are listening but not judging. This is pure presence. This is why children look so alive. They are in the now. They don't speak less, but they think less. Their speaking comes from silence, not from the mind. Now understand, as silence deepens, time starts loosening. You feel the days have become long, moments have become deep, and simultaneously a strange experience occurs. Hurry ends. Hurry is an illness of the mind. In silence there is no hurry, because silence knows that what is to happen will happen. Now another subtle change in silence. Your memory does not dominate you. Memories come, but they don't pull you. They are clouds, you are the sky. And when this understanding becomes stable, regret vanishes, because regret is the burden of the past and fear is the burden of the future. In silence there is no burden. This is why the person who lives in silence is light. His steps fall on the earth, but his mind is not bound anywhere. Now understand the ultimate meaning of speak only where necessary. When you are in the now, your speaking does not come from time. It does not come from memory, habit, or fear. It comes from the necessity of this moment. Sometimes this necessity demands words, sometimes silence, and you are comfortable in both. Now look, most people lie because they are trapped in time, protecting the past, planning for the future. In silence, there is no need for lies. Truth starts flowing naturally, and this truth does not make you lonely. This truth frees you from loneliness. Loneliness is in the crowd, solitude is in silence. I end this part with a very deep experience when time falls away. Life for the first time feels infinite. The clock keeps moving, but you are no longer locked in it. Now I am not taking you toward any new thing. Now I am taking you back to your home. Because what you were searching for was never outside. Whatever has happened so far, do not try to understand it. Understanding is the mind's job. Just see, has something gradually become quiet? Has something unnecessary fallen away on its own? If yes, then understand that silence has started working. Now understand the ultimate truth. Silence is not a goal. Silence is not an achievement. Silence is your natural state. Speaking is a necessity. Silence is your nature. You were silent in childhood, then words came only as much as needed. Then society came, language came, comparison came, ambition came, and silence was left behind. Now the practice is not to get something new. It is to remember the forgotten silence. Now hear the final meaning of speak only where necessary. When you settle into silence, you cannot speak in the wrong place, not in anger, not in fear, not for show, not to prove. Then speaking is no longer an event. It becomes a compassion. Now your speaking is heavy, not light. People listen even if they don't agree, because behind your words stands silence. And when you are quiet, that quietness is not uncomfortable. That quietness is safe. It is warm. It becomes a refuge. People sitting near you automatically slow down. Now understand, this is the point where life becomes meditation. You don't meditate separately. You don't practice silence separately. Whatever you do in silence. Now you don't fight with the crowd, nor with loneliness. You know the crowd is outside. Loneliness is in the mind, and solitude is in silence. Now death does not scare you, because every day you see the little lies dying, and every day something true takes birth. Now life does not feel like a weight, because the burden was I, and in silence that I has loosened. Now I give you no rules, no orders, just one final remembrance. If you ever wonder, if noise returns, if the mind dominates again, do nothing, just sit quiet. Silence will not scold you. Silence will not judge you. Silence will accept you again. And remember, you don't have to save silence. Silence saves itself. You just have to honestly get tired of the noise. Now this journey does not end here. It begins right here when you close this video. But don't close anything within yourself. I am quiet now, because what was to be said is not in words. Now silence will speak, and if you are truly listening, you will know I haven't gone anywhere. I am sitting right here, quiet within.